So I appreciated that you just recorded that video because I saw some similarities or some parallels with Ask Yourself. So Ask Yourself made excuses for Corey McCarthy. And in this same way, Mexie is associating herself with Finnish Bolshevik, this guy who is clearly in favor of radical regimes, radical communist regimes.
And current violent terrorist groups.
Yeah.
Current violent, where they don't even have, they're out in the jungle with,
Right, so I appreciate that you take this stance, even though I think most people are giving her a pass on that, because it's left wing rather than right wing. I think it is true that in the society that we live in, people are very reactionary toward right wing ideologies and not left wing.
Well, you also just asked the question. You started to ask me a second ago, well, in effect, would you be in a vegan group? Or in a vegan roundtable that included Ask Yourself, would you be in one that included Mexie? So it's a really interesting comparison, and it's a really interesting question, right? Like, of the two of them, obviously Ask Yourself is way rougher around the edges. Like, Mexie really puts a respectable face on this stuff. Mm-hmm. She looks harmless, she does her hair and makeup, and she speaks in this, calm and reassuring way. It's hard to believe she's threatening everyone. And, with Ask Yourself, you get a lot of Sturm und Drang. Sorry, it sort of lapsed in a joke. But, you get a lot of the agony. But I think the truth is, just like his name, I think he still is asking himself questions. I think he is capable of change. I think he's capable of reconsidering, his deep-seated assumptions and opinions, even about racism, which is all stuff I've really confronted him about and really debated with him. And I've had some kind of impact on the guy. It's obvious. It did matter to him, my opinions, and I raised issues and concerns and questions he never thought about before. So it's funny, of the two of them, I don't want to be in a vegan group with either one. That's easy to say, though. That's easy to say. In the future, it's easy for me to imagine Ask Yourself really making progress, maybe precisely because he is so rough around the edges, whereas I see someone like Mexie just being, very comfortable in her position of, how am I going to say it? She's having her cake and eating it, too. I mean, when it's convenient for her to present herself as just a moderate leftist, she does. And when it's convenient for her to present herself as a hardline communist in favor of, people's war, class war, Maoist revolutionary methods, and even current, guerrilla fighters or what have you, she can do that too, right?
Yeah. So this is a genuine question because, as we've been talking, and it hasn't come up in my life. Communism has not come up in my life really until
you moved to China.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So this is probably just ignorant question. She calls people a comrade, and isn't that really really,
she does call people comrade. It's true.
That is people who are communists call each other comrade. I just
you've noticed.
Yeah.
While you've been living in China, has anyone called you comrade the whole time? I don't think so.
No, but in the Naxalite footage that we watched, it was translating it into saying that their comrades are leaving, and etc.
So when the actor, famous silent film actor Charlie Chaplin, when he was put on trial, in effect, for being communist, he was at least questioned by the authority. He didn't quite get to trial. He was questioned. They actually went through the records of him and took out every time he used the word comrade. Yeah. Anyway, they asked him. So why
in film or
no, just in public lectures, in real life, in political context. And so in this context, why did you refer to this guy as comrade? This kind of thing. Yeah. Because it is so. Before communism, it was just a normal word in the English language. It was just We still have words like camaraderie and so on, but no, it has become a distinctive sign of communism. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, do you have a question to that or what?
No. Yeah. I was just that is identifying yourself with this. I don't know if there's a parallel term with the alt-right, there's a fellow Nazi. It does identify yourself as being a part of this ideology that even if you say you're not, you don't, identify yourself with it.
Right. And she does. I assume she's being sincere when obviously she says she has misgivings about totalitarian bureaucratic regimes and so on.
Right.
So do I, but I'm not a communist. I'm also not making excuses for them and so on, you know? I really do wish these people the best. I mean, it's possible she could ask herself these questions and do some research and emerge out of the other end of this rabbit hole. But again, you know, so the other channel, Finnish Bolshevik, if you're looking at that in context, it's totally reasonable for me to ask these questions. And this is a very clear red flag. And yes, she does refer to Finnish Bolshevik as comrade and everyone else. That's not guilt by association, but that really is the context within which you refer to yourself as a communist and a Marxist-Leninist,
Right.
taking a Marxist-Leninist approach specifically.
Like Donald Trump has taken crap recently because he retweeted videos from somebody in
right.
the UK who's a fascist.
Right.
Yeah. So in the same way, if you were collaborating or associating yourself with other groups or other people that are, you know, proclaiming one ideology or other.
I think though, I mean, you know, in terms of the asymmetry between the right and the left on this, most people are just willing to concede without investigating at all that somehow there's a kernel of the original pure communist philosophy that's good and well intentioned. And that it's merely, you know, covered with the dirt of history. Like at the bottom there was a diamond, and they started rolling it down a muddy slope, and then by the end the diamond was covered with mud. But there's still a diamond, and people are willing to concede that with not even Wikipedia level reading, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, you were going to say you hear that all the time, or what?
No. I was just going to say, like, recently I have heard that. Like I said, you know, communism hasn't been something that I'm knowledgeable about. But like a couple of my friends, I was just recently like in touch with them, and it's really just one that she seems to have communist beliefs, and I'm just like, where is this coming from? I think it really is like. More
from Facebook. I don't know.
Yeah.
Most people choose their religion and ideology from Facebook these days. You know,
she gets it from Tumblr. I think. Yeah, I really think that.
But you know, right. Okay, Tumblr rather than Facebook. Sorry, my mistake.
Well, it's but you know pretty different. I mean, people are more willing to say things on Tumblr than they are on Facebook. Like,
because of anonymity, I guess.
Yeah.
But look, I was going to say I really feel the other way about it, but I'm someone who really has read and studied communist philosophy. Like, it's not the core, it's the mud on the outside I can see some value in. I was just saying to you a minute ago, like, so we're living right now in China. Mm-hmm. The reality of what China is today, I can totally understand someone respecting it. So like, let's say you're from Angola in Africa today. You're in Angola and you look at China and you think, okay, we can learn something from this guy. Not from communist philosophy. Not from the Cultural Revolution, the Great Leap Forward, not from Mao Zedong, not from the period before 1949, not from the horrible violence in the decades after. No, but you can learn from what China is today as a totally corrupt, totally capitalist country with a communist dictatorship, you know, on the top of the pyramid, right? That I understand. That would be when the thing rolls to the bottom of the hill, you say, wow, the mud on the outside, this is pretty good. You know, that makes sense to me. That I could respect. And that would be a moderate position, even though I think anyone who spent time in China thinks, wow, this country's got a lot right. Yeah. You know, you've done a lot right. Why can't you guys have freedom of the press, free speech, elections? Why can't you meet the minimum standards other countries meet? Why can't you replace the dictatorship on the top with something else? You know, but it's really a totally false optic because, in my opinion, the philosophy at the core of it really is poison. That's why it's so jarring to communists. I even remember Slavoj Žižek talking about this. Sorry, name of the moment. But, you know, a lot of communists, they feel that Stalin was evil. But then the earlier period with Lenin was morally good. So this is one of many things. And then when I say to them, I've mentioned this recently on my channel, I said, well, do you know that they actually had elections in 1917? Yeah. And do you know what happened after this?
Lenin murdered the guy that was elected.
Right. And Lenin's side. That's another whole story. Hunting down and murdering Trotsky. That goes on and on. No. But it wasn't Trotsky who ran against him in the elections. The party that won the elections was called the Socialist Revolutionary Party, who were a far left-wing party. And then the Bolsheviks hunted down and murdered everyone elected to parliament. Their fellow left-wingers, the socialists, because they were much more threatened by people who were their competition on the far left than they were by people who were right-wing or centrist or Democrats or something. Those were the people they really wanted to murder, were the competition on the far. But Lenin lost the elections. He didn't win, and then he canceled the elections. Parliament met once. They had one day of meeting, and then they started hunting down and killing everyone in Parliament. And on a village-by-village basis, I wrote about this in 1920, they started killing everyone in the villages who supported any of the other parties, which was, of course, the vast majority of the population, because in most of these areas, like less than 5% of people voted for the Bolsheviks, and they knew that because they had the poll results. So they were persecuting and murdering the other 95%. It's really that extreme. Anyway, but my point was, when you say that to someone who has that view where they feel there's this diamond in the mud, right? And they were thinking that Lenin was pure and then later Stalin was impure, then they're like, not always, but one response to that, sometimes you just get shock and disbelief. You get people who don't want to accept that. But then they just try to go back to the earlier period where it's like, oh, well, the period with Marx and Engels, like the period before Lenin, that was good. And then you start breaking down, well, do you know what they actually said about the French Revolution?
Right. Was the French Revolution good?
Well, yeah, and specifically what they praised. Because again, I can't say there's nothing good about the French Revolution, but what Marx and Engels liked about the French Revolution was the Great Terror, as it's known to everyone else, was the persecution and massacre of people, the cutting off the heads of aristocrats. They write about it very clearly. They wanted that to go further. That's their model of social change. They don't find the best part of the French Revolution. The best part of the French Revolution is basically just people sitting down and writing a new constitution and a new Declaration of Rights and saying that slavery is bad. Yes, slavery is bad. Unfortunately, the French Revolution concludes with Napoleon taking over and legalizing slavery again. There are some things you can really respect, especially in the early days of the French Revolution. But what Marx and Engels are responding to, what they're enthusiastic about, is the worst element of the French Revolution. And that really played out in history. It played out in the history of Russia, it played out in the history of Europe, and it also played out in the history of China here, where they imitated those principles, where we really had mass murder, in imitation.
Yeah, weren't you just saying in Cambodia people were saying
Yes.
that same excuse, like, well, if we would have kept murdering people,
Yes.
if we would have kept doing what, yeah.
Right. No, that's right. It comes ultimately, that mentality comes straight out of Marx and Engels, because their feeling about the French Revolution was, in this late period, the Great Terror period, that if only it had gone further, if only it had kept going and it didn't have this reactionary tendency that people wanted to stop massacring people, that it would have succeeded. And that's right. Then even when you look at Cambodia, in the 1970s, and pathetically, the attitude, it doesn't even end in the 1970s and 80s and 90s, because the Khmer Rouge, they cease to control the capital, but they keep murdering people. It's really, really a sad history. Right up till their reign of terror ends when Bill Clinton is in power, amazingly. Anyway, but, and their attitude sincerely is, if only they had kept killing more people, then utopia was just around the corner. Just a few more years of mass starvation and mass murder, and utopia is just over there. But look, can I ask another question? At what point does a word get discredited? Just the word communism. We talked about politics, talked about the history, talked about, but at what point would you stop using that label because it's killed too many people? Even if you believe those, even if you sincerely believe those are misinterpretations. At what point you say, you know what? This is a little bit too susceptible to misinterpretation.
Yeah.
When do you hit that point? Because for real, I am anti-Catholic. I am the world's harshest fucking critic of the Catholic Church for exactly the same reason. At what point do you say the Catholic Church has discredited itself? It's killed millions of people. Look at what it did to the native people in Canada. And I'm Canadian, so that matters to me especially. But look what Catholic Church did all around the world. Look what it did in small Polynesian islands. Look what it did within Italy. Look what it did to Ireland. Ireland is really fucked up by Catholicism too. I mean, that's a different kind of remote island. You know what I mean? Completely The Catholics destroyed Ireland. What can I tell you? There's a great documentary, by the way. Okay, it's not that great. It's an okay documentary called Sex in a Cold Climate. And it's just, oh my God, it's so depressing. And, it includes specific sexual misconduct by the Catholic Church. But it also just raises the general question of how, all of Ireland is, mentally and psychologically crippled by the sexual politics of Catholicism. You know what I mean? Anyway, so, at what point do you just decide, the word, the term National Socialist, most often abbreviated to Nazi, it's kind of been discredited, guys. The term communist, at this point, I just don't get it. And I struggle with, I wish, in Canada it was really a problem. The Green Party is fucked up. Well, what are you going to do? Start the Maroon Party? Like, it's a real problem. You can run out of words sometimes. It's a real creative challenge. I don't want the term veganism. That's one of the reasons I came on YouTube in the first place, criticizing people. I don't want people like Gary Yourofsky to discredit the word veganism. I don't want Durian Rider to discredit the word veganism. I don't want to have to get a new word. I'm still defending that label. But I'll tell you something. At some point, I mean, if the word veganism is associated with the kind of atrocities communism is associated with, I'll get rid of the term. I'm going to come up with a new label. You know? I don't know.
Yeah. In the same way, like if people that, if a lot of people who are vegan are communists, then like that's also
it's true.
blackening the name in a way.
It's true. I don't remember any other YouTube channel talking about that before I came on, but like really saying, look guys, veganism is not left wing. And I got a ton of feedback, positive and negative, and just like, oh gee, they never thought veganism is also not yoga. You know what I mean?
No.
I'm just saying, veganism has to be separated from some of the accretions, some of the cultural associations that have been attached to it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so in the case of veganism, it's the exact opposite. Then I do think it's the diamond in the mud. I don't think it's the other stuff. The core idea is what I really think is positive and good. Yeah. And but no, if it gets associated with far left wing politics, and that was the whole argument of the intersectional people. That was what they wanted. Yeah, they actively wanted to subsume veganism within left wing politics. And it's like, no, to me this is fundamentally I don't even want veganism to be subsumed within the animal rescue paradigm or the, what I mean? It's like, no, like even some closely related things in animal rights, I have to say, no, this is not the same. This is not the same as taking care of stray pets or whatever, We really need to separate and say veganism is just veganism. Yeah. But look, on the other hand, I've said before too, this is a challenge for me. I think it's a challenge I'm going to have all my life. If you really believe that veganism is for everybody, then that also means it's for people you disagree with. So that means you're, it's also for Mexie, and it's also for these right-wing people and what have you. And that's a struggle we're going to have all our lives, right?
Right.
You remember the video I did making fun of the Holocaust denier guy, the vegan Holocaust denier? Remember him?
Yeah.
I think he's in Chiang Mai, that guy. I don't know. Last I heard, he was in Chiang Mai. Hopefully, we might bump into him in Chiang Mai. I hope not, but yeah. In that case, my response to him, I don't take him seriously at all. To me, it's a laughing matter, put it that way. And you can see, I responded to it seriously. I was harshly condemning what he said. But, to me, I don't think that, obviously, that guy just glanced around the internet. So. But, just keep in mind, with somebody like Mexie, I'm not doing them the disservice of thinking they don't know what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. I'm taking it seriously to that extent. If this person says on the internet that this is their political position, and, I really believe in freedom of speech. She has the right to come on the internet and make her pitch to play some kind of leadership role in the vegan movement. And she's doing a better job than Durian Rider. She's really, that's the real comparison. That's the alternative people have. People look at her, people look at privileged vegan, and then people look at people like, they look at Durian Rider, and they look at someone like Unnatural Vegan. I mean, Unnatural Vegan is not providing any leadership for the vegan movement. She could, but, it's a very strange thing.
She's explicitly said she's not looking for community. She's not looking for... Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, her deal is she just makes money out of YouTube, apparently. I mean, she's not interested in activism, period, I think. She's not interested in organizing anything. Right. So, okay, fine, that's, but someone like Mexie, I really respect her right to step up and try to play a leadership role. I really do. I don't even know what her PhD is in, but she's apparently getting a PhD and so on. So she may be in a position that I can only say the same thing I'd say about Ask Yourself, which started this conversation. Who's flirted with far right-wing stuff, who's flirted with racist stuff and so on, but he doesn't really know what he's doing. I hope you do the math. I hope you do the reading. I hope you think this all the way through. I hope you keep questioning your assumptions. And I hope that at the end of that process, you're a better person than you are today, because who you are today and what you are today is a sack of shit.